What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Schreckbein, joined every Monday and Wednesday by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, jam-packed show for you guys as we enter the final week without training camp. We are this close to football, and it feels so good. Le'Veon Bell sent out a tweet again, apologizing to Steelers fans, reminiscing on the past and realizing that the grass is not always greener on the other side. The hype around the Pittsburgh Steelers continues to grow, and we got to ask the question, is it getting a little bit too dangerous this early in the summer? The Steelers could find themselves on Hard Knocks next season, and we'll talk about maybe that's not the greatest thing for television, but could be fun for the fans that want a little inside scoop of Mike Tomlin and company. And then the worst case scenario for the Aaron Donald trade has emerged, and we unfortunately got to dive into it. It's a beautiful day in the Berg. It was a beautiful weekend here in the Berg. How you feel, my friend?
Feeling good, and enjoying these last couple weeks before all of our time is consumed by football season. Yeah, I mean, once August hits, like it's nice, July, like in June, and they stay relatively quiet, so like you have a little bit more free time. But on the other hand, like you just get bored. Like
So bored.
You want stuff to happen, and stuff starts happening pretty soon. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, it's a weird concept of like once November rolls around, the end of November, really, you're like, wow, I cannot wait for football to end, But then June, July's here, and you're just like, all right, well, football would be awesome right now. This would be it's a weird concept. It's a weird concept when you're in it, but we're very excited to get to Latrobe. St. Vincent College is going to be awesome. It's fun. I was asked this yesterday at a birthday party. Do you think anybody's pulling out a grand entrance in Latrobe?
What, like an AB helicopter?
Yeah, AB helicopter, James Harrison pulling up in the truck in the big 18-wheeler. Think anybody's got that? It's a weird roster for that.
I don't know. Yeah, because I feel like all the guys who would, do something like that are like younger guys, like the rookies who don't who maybe wouldn't want to throw around that kind of money on like some kind of crazy entrance like that. Like I feel like Najee maybe has the personality for it. I feel like George Pickens maybe does too, but I feel like they're going to be a little bit more, I mean, they're still rookies, like still in those first contracts, which aren't always as big as some of us kind of think they are. So I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I wouldn't be shocked if we do see one.
Yeah, I tried to give the same answer. I was like, George Pickens would be the name that comes to mind, but I don't know if he's going to do it. I also don't know if he wants that attention given to him. You know what I'm saying? I think that, like AB loved it, man. He pulled up in that helicopter. He's just like, look at me. Everybody look at me. James Harrison loved it. I don't know. I don't think anybody's going to do it. Cam Hayward maybe, but he pulls up and with a suitcase, one suitcase and a pillow every year. He's just like, all right, let's get to work. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. All right, let's talk current Pittsburgh Steelers as we approach this final week before training camp. We'll start with Le'Veon Bell, who had a very interesting tweet the other day, once again, apologizing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, once again admitting that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's been 2-3 months now since he went on the Steel Curtain or Steel Here podcast and talked about his time in Pittsburgh and how he wanted to come back. And then he sends out a bit of an apology to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll check it out here real quick.
I never apologize to the fans for really sitting out or leaving the Steelers. I never apologize. So I'm going to say I apologize for leaving the best damn fans there is in this damn world. I shouldn't have left. I apologize. I should never have left. I apologize. That's my fault. That's on me. I never apologize to the fans.
Never apologized to the fans. Had to apologize to the fans. Shouldn't have never left. That's on me. He keeps going. I think the toughest part here is like you look back and the 180 by Le'Veon Bell since everything kind of fallen apart has been very drastic. You heard that again though. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, I don't know. I think ultimately it's just sad how things ended. Like for everyone involved. Like I get it. Le'Veon got his money. Steelers moved on. I guess they found capable replacements, and everyone just kind of, moved on. But I don't know. He was a really good player. I remember at the time thinking, yeah, he's doing the right thing. Like, he's got to go get his money. Like,
Yeah.
this careers in the NFL, especially for running backs, are pretty fleeting. Like, he didn't owe the Steelers anything. Like, this is. I think he made the right move at the time, but still, it's just like there was so much potential, on that team. If he was more willing to come back to the Steelers, if he was willing to play again, if he was on that team and AB and Ben and him stick together, they probably could have done some special things. But yeah, it's just like, and it's just, I think, sad just to see him have to like kind of, I guess, eat crow. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but just express his regrets and like show those regrets and acknowledge them. That's just a sad way for a good player to go out. And I think I don't know. I think between the potential lost and just, how bitter the ending was for him in Pittsburgh, that sucks. Like, that, I don't think anyone enjoyed. Like, I don't even see like Steelers fans like relishing seeing Le'Veon like lead the league. I think it was just ultimately sad for everyone.
Is that what it was like on the other side of that when the whole contract situation was going down? Because I only experienced it from the Pittsburgh Steelers side, and I kind of had a foot in the door, so I had to be, somewhat neutral about the situation. From the other side, did it look like it was? Was your thought of it like, hey, Bell, this is Bell, go get your bag?
Yeah, I mean, like, that's how I kind of thought of it. So he ended up getting less money than what the Steelers
Less money,
offered.
more guaranteed.
Yeah, and so I always kind of fall on the side of like, yeah, you got to go get your money. Like, the guaranteed money was what he was hung up on. So, he got what he wanted ultimately. But I was kind of on Bell's side, I guess you could say. Like, I thought he made the right move for himself. I thought that was what he should have done, and that's what he did. Hindsight is 2020. Like, who knows how it would have shaken out if he had stayed with the Steelers. But yeah, I also did at the time have there's a guy I knew from high school who was a big Steelers fan, and he was so bitter about it. Like, he was so mad at Bell for like wanting to leave and like kind of holding the Steelers over a barrel a little bit. And I don't know. I mean, we're all obnoxious about our football teams to a certain point when they're, especially when they're good. And he was also pretty obnoxious about the Steelers. So I kind of did enjoy, I was like, yeah, Bell, like, make this guy suffer. Let's
go get your bag. I agree with that though. Like, I'm always on the side of the players getting paid. I think that your NFL lifespan is already super short and you've put your body at risk enough. Go get your money. Being on the inside, it's interesting for you to say that, because every Steelers fan was exactly like the kid that you knew. It was, this guy stinks. I can't believe he's doing this. What a selfish individual. Now that I'm, removed from the situation, I will say this. I don't think Bell was selfish in the fact that he wanted to reset the market. I think that was a smart decision. I think it was the beginning of the downfall of a running back in the NFL, and he wanted to put that on himself and kind of ramp that back up, and I appreciate that, and I think that should be respected. I think everything that he did that went along with that, he was too extreme. He took the, like, I'm not a remove all of your pictures from social media guy to say that I want a contract extension. I think that that's ridiculous. Like, I don't understand that. I never, like, when Kyler Murray did it and everybody was like, oh my gosh, he's done. And then it was like, no, this is a tactic to just get an extension. I'm like, why? Like, what is the message here? That can't be said to anybody in a meeting privately. Bell went way beyond that. Like, he dropped a whole album dissing the Steelers, dissing everybody else. He called himself, he made it very well known that he believed that the city of Pittsburgh made him a villain and that he did not make himself a villain. And I think he did make himself a villain. I think that he took those steps too. And my thing is, if he went about it just quietly, like, or like loud enough that other teams wanted to pay him, but it wasn't a controversial situation outside of, like what Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs are going through right now. Like at some point, both of these guys will get a boatload of money. It might not be with the teams that they're currently on, but they'll get paid, at least Saquon, I believe. And that could have been Le'Veon Bell in an easier situation because the running back market was still valued a little bit more. I think he took it to such an extreme that you're like, okay, like at some point you got to take some blame for it. But I do, like, I think he did win the battle there, lost the war ultimately. But it's just like, also at what point are we just going to like move on?
Right.
It would be the end of the Le'Veon Bell conversation.
Yeah. It's just like, why do we have to keep rehashing this? Like, what happened? Like, and does anyone care anymore? Like,
No.
Was anyone waiting on an apology from Le'Veon Bell? Like, I feel like everyone
No.
had kind of come to peace with what had happened. It was long ago. It was when I was in high school, I guess.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was like 5 years. That's a lifetime in the NFL. So like at this point, like really, who cares? Like this is, but yeah, I completely agree with that. That there was accompanying unprofessionalism that just made everything a lot harder than it needed to be.
Yes, and there was no need for it. Like
right.
you could have kept yourself very mild throughout the situation, expressed the need. I think that's the biggest thing, is that the argument that we'll get from this, from those who say that we're wrong, will be, well, he had to bring light. He had to bring this attention. He had to kind of make it a big deal. I 100% agree with that. You had to make it as big of a deal as you possibly could without crossing a line. And he blew up the line. The line wasn't even he full sprint, dodgeball, jump over the line, trying to throw a ball and get somebody out. Last ditch effort, cross the line. And it just, that's where I think I turn away from it.
Well, I feel like easier ways to communicate with, like, you have an agent for a reason. Like, you can communicate with your team and other teams in much easier and like simpler ways than the ways he did.
Yep. And especially with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If we know anything about the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are, they'll talk. They're very open, but they're very private. And the minute that you make something a big deal publicly, they're like, okay, well, why would we be involved with this? Like we're an in-house organization and we'll solve things in-house, and it might not work out, but we're going to do it our way. And Bell didn't do that, so the grass is not always greener. Like you said, like, I think everybody's moved on. And like, I mean, I think the next question is like, will Le'Veon Bell like ever be back? Because if there is an argument that he's at some point belongs in like the Ring of Honor or the Hall of Honor, excuse me. Does he come back for that? Do the Steelers like at some point welcome this guy back to their organization?
I think there's a world where like enough time has passed that everyone's like, all right, who cares? Like, and he kind of privately makes his amends with the Steelers as an organization. Just if you're the Steelers, like, you kind of gotta do some gauging of public opinion. Like, is Le'Veon Bell someone that the fans are going to respond to when you have whatever Ring of Honor ceremony at whatever game or whenever? Like, is he just going to get booed? Like, you don't want that either. Like, that's.
Could you imagine AB get booed? You think AB'd ever get? You think they'd ever welcome AB back?
Yeah, I'm sure AB would love to. I bet eventually, like, AB would love to come back, but they are not. You can't touch AB if you are the Steelers. Like, you can't.
No chance. You have to put him in the Hall of Honor, though, right? No, but maybe not.
Do you?
It's the Hall of Honor.
I don't think you do. Like,
no.
Obviously, the football qualifications like are all there, but I think there's too much off the field stuff for you to even consider, for any NFL team to consider touching Antonio Brown in kind of any capacity. Like,
any team, not just the Pittsburgh Steelers, welcoming him for a halftime ceremony. That would be awesome. I would love that locker room session beforehand so much. I would love the speech. I would love the arrival.
Yeah. That's the thing, because it would be the AB show. It would.
Oh gosh, yeah. It would be wild. He'd definitely take a jab at whoever the current wide receivers are. Be like, I'm just saying, man, like, I'll probably go out there and still play better than these guys. Like, and it would be so awesome. It'd be so awesome. All right, let's talk next. I guess the biggest news, the biggest headline would be the Pittsburgh Steelers potentially being on the ballot for Hard Knocks next season, because at this point, I mean, I don't think anybody in the NFL wants Hard Knocks. The fans enjoy Hard Knocks. I like watching Hard Knocks, but as someone who is involved and knows how these players and these coaches feel about these things, I can tell you that they don't like when I'm in the locker room. They don't like at all when Hard Knocks is following these guys around for an entire training camp when they're trying to get moving. Fellas, have you ever wished that you were a little bit taller? Maybe you matched on Tinder, but her profile says must be over 6 foot. Maybe your date wants to wear heels, but she can't because it'll make her taller than you. Well, I have the short kings covered with today's sponsor, Kanzuri. Kanzuri makes shoes that make you up to 2.8 inches taller without anyone knowing. Look, girls get heels, makeup, and push-up bras. Why can't men get a boost in confidence too? We're all the same height laying down anyways, if you know what I mean. For a limited time only, our listeners get an extra 15% off your order with our code ALLSteelers at Kanzuri.com. The site is already 30% off, and with our code, you get an extra 15%. That's 45% off your entire order. Support our show and check them out at CONZURI.com and use our code ALLSteelers. I love these shoes. I wear them all the time because I tell people I'm 5'8" on a good day. These make me at least 5'11", pushing 6 foot. I've never felt taller in my life. Not only do Kanzuri shoes make you up to 2.8 inches taller, but they're also incredibly stylish and comfortable. These are not old man Velcro shoes. You'd get compliments on your Kanzuris even if they didn't make you taller. They have styles for every occasion too. Smart, casual, sporty, you name it. The height insoles are actually built into the shoe, so no one can tell you're getting a secret height boost. The brand is also hidden on the shoes and on the packaging. It's really the ultimate height hack. Life's short, but you don't have to be. It's time to level up your playing field, boys. Maybe update that dating profile to 6 foot. Kanzuris is an absolute game changer when it comes to your dating life. On top of 30% off the entire site, our listeners get an exclusive 15% off discount at Kanzuri.com with the code ALLSteelers. That's a total of 45% off your order. Use code ALLSteelers at Kanzuri.com. Go to CONZURI.com with our code ALLSteelers. When I want to get high, I put on a pair of Kanzuris. The New York Jets were forced into it this offseason. They're not fans of it. Next year, if the Pittsburgh Steelers do not make the playoffs, that is back-to-back years that they do not make the playoffs. They do not have a new head coach, and it's probably assumed that Mike Tomlin is not going anywhere. They could be on the ballot. They could be selected. I think it's a hard argument if Hard Knocks is forcing teams into this at this point. If the NFL is just saying, this is who we want, this is what's happening, it's a hard argument to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not top of that list, no matter who else is on there, especially with teams that haven't made the playoffs the last 2 years. The Steelers would probably be number one.
Right.
Pittsburgh with Hard Knocks. I mean, what would you even expect from that?
I think it would be supremely boring television that people would eat up, quite honestly. Like, at least people in this city, I think would love it. Like, obviously, like, there's just a big enough following that, and the Steelers are enough of like a national, and I guess you could say global brand that like that makes him a real attractive candidate as someone who's not a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, I think this would be very boring television. Like, I'm just not, and that's good for the organization. Like, they don't have any outlandish personalities. Like, Mike Tomlin would be good for a couple like funny scenes where he's like coaching people up and like has some one-liners that are nice. But like, TJ Watt's not gonna like he's Kenny Pickett's not Aaron Rodgers. Like, at least the Jets might not like having them around, but Aaron Rodgers is gonna give you, like, him and Sauce. I think their relationship's kind of funny, but like, Aaron Rodgers is gonna give you some funny moments. He's gonna at least be a little eccentric. Like, I can't think of anyone on the Steelers who would deliver a kind of similar entertainment value.
No, I think that maybe George Pickens would be fun to watch. Kenny Pickett is the most boring interview of all time, and he gives you nothing. Like, he doesn't walk around and like make jokes or anything. Like, he just walks and does his thing. Mike Tomlin would be great television, but at some point, like, you need other things besides Mike Tomlin. Cam Hayward might be the only one I could think of. Like, Najee would hide. He would never talk. He would almost never show face to these cameras. He would do everything he could to avoid these cameras. TJ, just like you said, TJ Watt wants nothing to do with this. Not even. Minka Fitzpatrick wants nothing to do with this at all. And the rest of them is like, there's just nobody else. There's nobody in Pittsburgh that you're sitting there and going, okay, we need a superstar to represent this team on Hard Knocks the way that Aaron Rodgers and all these. There's nobody in Pittsburgh that's going to want to do that. There's not.
Yeah, there's not even like a Travis Kelce. I feel like who would like.
No.
Like the best guys to watch would probably be like you said, like Cam Hayward and maybe Zach Gentry. You said that before we came on. Like those guys are funny and I think like cool to talk to, but not in a they're going to give you great TV type of way. You know, like they're cordial and friendly, and it's like cool to like interact with them, but like it's not. It's not the same. That's not great television in and of itself.
No. Little moments here and there, one hits, boom, boom, boom. Whereas in like, just like you said, like a Travis Kelce will constantly give you good television. He will constantly, like he absorbs that light. Aaron Rodgers naturally absorbs that light and he loves it, but Sauce the same way. Nobody in Pittsburgh's, just don't want that. They just don't want anything to do with that. Most of them are shy guys. Like they know how to talk to the media, but they don't, they do it because they have relationships with us and they're like, okay, like, we understand they get what we're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's the other way around. Whereas in Hard Knocks, it's like, do something television worthy. And you're just like, no, thank you. I'm good. And Mike Tomlin is like, Latrobe would be a really good one. And it'd be cool. The atmosphere would be awesome. Yeah. But at the same time, like, dude, Mike Tomlin is not the same person in training camp and if we're being honest, like I don't even pay attention to Mike Tomlin during training camp because he's got nothing to say. He gives you very bare minimum. He fully understands that this is training camp and it's not in season. Whereas in like, if you caught him like walking through the locker room, like we've seen him, sometimes he walks into that locker room and he's just yelling, and doing funny things. And you're just like, this would be good. You're not going to get that in training camp. You're not going to get any of that because it's on a field and then everybody goes and eats food and goes their own separate ways and does their own, meetings and so on and so forth. Just bad television, man. Hard Knocks would be.
I think this year in particular wouldn't be that entertaining. Like I think last year you could make an argument that there would be some like, you got all the rookies, you got a quarterback battle, there was some interesting stuff going on. Jaylen Warren, like breaking that, that stuff would be interesting. I can't say the same for this year. Like the roster is so set. Like it's really just everyone waiting on this team to actually hit the field and see what they can do against real live NFL competition. And that doesn't happen until I'm not a Hard Knocks guy. I gotta be honest, but like
I barely watch Hard Knocks. I watched Hard Knocks the in-season one last year.
I was gonna. So do they follow them through like this Jets one? They're gonna follow them through the whole season, or like do they?
No, just training camp.
Yeah,
which is that's where I think it ends. Like next year, like say the Steelers don't make the playoffs this year, next year they get tossed on Hard Knocks, and I don't want to spend like the hypotheticals of Hard Knocks for the Pittsburgh Steelers are slim. I get it, but say they don't make the playoffs this year, the next year the storyline is the Steelers are coming back. Like you know what I mean? They're working. It feel kind of like a last chance. Like. This is it, man. We got to come back. We got to make the playoffs. Blah, blah, blah. It would be so hyped during training camp. You'd get to a point, and then you'd break off, and then you'd have to remember that it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, which means they get almost no national attention unless they do something terribly wrong. But besides that, like nobody's going to pay attention to this team. Like the Steelers fans are going to pay attention to this team, and that's going to be awesome. But the national, like people will pay attention to the Jets. People will pay attention to Aaron Rodgers. The Pittsburgh Steelers do everything in their power every single day when they speak to the media to make sure nobody cares about this team outside of playing football. And it'll fade off. It'd be HBO, I think it'd be a good choice on paper, bad choice once they just got to talk to me for 10 minutes and I'll tell them exactly why they should not do this and it'd be bad. I think Hard Knocks is on its way out at this point though. Like
really?
Yeah, like how many times can you force a team into this before all the owners at the owners meetings, like, okay, we don't want this anymore. Let's, nobody wants this. Let's get out of here. And I get that the NFL wants it to happen, but the NFL is the owners. So, Hard Knocks, I think is limited. And Art Rooney could be that one. That's just like, we're done. It's over. That's the end of Hard Knocks. It was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, he would absolutely be the one to like him. Maybe not Jerry Jones, but he's one of those.
Oh, Jerry Jones would love it. He'd be like, bring him in.
True. Jerry Jones would be like, you can just have a camera follow me around all day. I don't care. But
he would be. He would be.
Yeah, no. Art Rooney feels like the type of, like you said, like a little more private. Like that's just how the organizations run to a certain extent. And they just wouldn't want that kind of spotlight. I agree.
No, I agree. All right, let's keep it moving here. The Pittsburgh Steelers are continuously getting hype for everything. Kenny Pickett, the offense, the defense. ESPN recently ranked Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt the second best edge rusher duo or pass rushing duo in the NFL. Huge hype. Kenny Pickett is expected. The other day he was named a dark horse MVP candidate by Rondé Barber. Bleacher Report put out the best and worst case scenarios for the Pittsburgh Steelers or for the AFC North and said that, the best case scenario is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have one dominant offense and that the AFC North is a 4-team free-for-all and everybody go gets it. Jason McIntyre, we talked about him, I believe, last week, saying that the Steelers headed to the AFC Championship game. The hype is incredibly real. And don't get it wrong, we started this 2 months ago, 3 months ago, talking about how the Pittsburgh Steelers have everything in line to be a team on the rise. But I think where it's gone from there has been less the Pittsburgh Steelers have all the pieces to the puzzle and more this is what we expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to do, and we haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
You look at all this, you look at all the hype, you look at all the ridiculously high expectations for guys like Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, and everybody else. Is it getting a point where training camp's a week away and we are crossing a dangerous line of a pretty significant letdown by the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, I think I don't know. I think there is healthy and informed hype out there.
Yes.
That is well deserved. But once we start talking about Kenny Pickett for MVP and stuff like that, that's where I think you kind of cross over into some dangerous hype and maybe some undeserved hype, because I think even at this team's best, even at their ceiling, at least for this year, it's leaning on a defense that should be work. I don't think it's unreasonable at all, and you should definitely expect this defense to be a top 10 at the very worst, a top 5 unit maybe at the very best, league or defense in the league. But there's still the offense has to actually do it, and when you're leaning on a defense and a running game, if Kenny Pickett is an MVP candidate at any point this season, Steelers are going to the playoffs. They're probably going to win the division. But that seems unrealistic, and that seems unhealthy to kind of expect of, or even kind of, I don't know. If you're a fan, you can dream as much as you want. I'm not gonna handicap that, but I think you might be setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment if you are expecting that much of this team that is so unproven on at least one side of the ball.
Yes, I agree. You got to look at it as a whole and say, could the Pittsburgh Steelers win the AFC North? Absolutely. And I think that they have a better opportunity to than anybody outside of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think that's where, that's what the opportunity is to dethrone the Cincinnati Bengals and kind of retake the North. The Steelers, I think, have a better opportunity than the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. But at the same time, there are huge factors that could hold the Pittsburgh Steelers back. Matt Canada is still very much so in the front seat of controlling this offense. That's not ideal for anybody and could be a huge, huge deterrent of any success that this team has in 2023. And I think that that's where it starts is, well, if the offensive coordinator is bad, everybody on that team's bad. Najee Harris, you're hoping for a lot, but he could give you exactly what he's given you the last 2 seasons. And then you're looking at the situation going, okay, well, it's not an upgrade. That's exactly what they were rocking with a year ago. Kenny Pickett, we have no idea. We see everybody wants to talk about the it factor and, Kenny's got some ball and he could win in tough moments. I 110% agree with that one. But you cannot go into a 2-minute drive every single week of the season and come out winners and expect to do these phenomenal things. You might make the playoffs. You might have an opportunity to win the AFC North 100%. You're not winning the Super Bowl with 11 last-minute drives to win games in a regular season. Your team's going to be exhausted, and you're going to have nothing left in the tank once you get into these big games against teams like Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, or the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs, or the Buffalo Bills up in Buffalo. It's a bad situation. There's just so many things that could go the opposite way that you're like, oh, okay, let's wait and see. I think just like you said, there is some educated hype around this team, and I think that educated hype is exactly where you should sit if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan or anybody talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a second-year quarterback that looked very promising at the end of the season last year. They have a running game that should take a significant step forward because the offensive line looks way better, and Najee Harris is healthy, and Jaylen Warren's entering year 2. They just added a huge tight end that should help pretty much all around. They added a wide receiver that should help Kenny Pickett in the red zone. Calvin Austin's coming back, and this defense looks better than it did a year ago, and the defense last year was impressive. On paper, that's a team that should do some pretty good things, but it's also a team that we have no idea what's going to happen, because, maybe Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts are not the answer, and the inside linebacker room stinks. Maybe Najee Harris can't get it going, and this is the year that anything could happen. Maybe Kenny Pickett isn't it. Maybe Allen Robinson stinks. There's a million questions. Isaac Seumalo is 30 years old. Maybe that's troublesome for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You just, you don't know what's going to happen to this team, and you just have to talk on paper and not like the MVP candidate is like, okay, let's calm it down. Let's simmer this water here. The AFC Championship games, like, okay, cool, it could happen. And we talked about like, yeah, there's a possibility, but that's so far away, and we don't know what's going to go on.
A lot of things have to break right for them to really hit
their
ceiling, and for, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, there's a ceiling and a floor. There's like a pretty high ceiling but there's also a pretty low floor, and
yes,
odds are they're going to fall somewhere in the middle. So, it's just, like I said, if you're a fan, you can have however high expectations you want to. Like, you're a fan, like it literally doesn't matter. But if you're someone who wants to look at this team objectively and wants to, kind of create some reasonable expectations for yourself, don't just temper them a little bit,
Yes.
just like don't go into the season with an open mind, don't be, you don't need to be a downer. You can have your expectations, and you can believe that they're capable of good things because they made the right moves this offseason, at least in my opinion, to make themselves competitive. But I think this season's also about, like, they were a competitive team last year, obviously like competed for the playoffs and stuff like that. But I think this year is just about kind of leveling up who they can compete with. You don't have expectations of them to make an AFC Championship and compete for a Super Bowl really just yet, but you just want them to be right there. You want them to be in the mix, be in the conversation to win the division, to make the playoffs. I guess you just want them to get there right now, because the other thing is, this is a super young team, like, in a lot of ways. Like, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of meat left on that bone. Like, even if, this season isn't everything that you might have hoped for, and they don't hit that ceiling just yet.
Yep, exactly. Head into this training camp with open eyes to see where they are, minimal expectations, and then once the season comes, like, you have to still take everything with a grain of salt. And I was talking to, like, over the weekend, my neighbor had a party. I was talking to one of his buddies from Cleveland, and he kept trying to convince me that the Cleveland Browns are in, man. They're going to be good. This is the season. And all I kept saying was, man, the Browns are the Browns. The Browns are the Browns, and they have always been the Browns. In my eyes, it was like a delusional outlook on how good a team could be before they're proven to be good. And you got to remember that we are not playing Madden. This is all on paper. Paper means absolutely nothing in the NFL. Nothing whatsoever. Otherwise, Kenny Pickett last year would have been absolute trash because his stat line was as bad as it gets. But instead, we're talking about maybe this guy's pretty good and he's got the it factor. So just like you said, you gotta temper those expectations, head into everything with an open mind. And if you're a Steelers fan, have the outlook of this could be a phenomenal season, 100%. But when it starts not being that way, also understand that there are a lot of moving parts that were question marks that maybe don't work out. And because of that, you gotta worry about one side or the other. All right. Last thing I want to talk about here, the absolute worst case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think in my head, when it comes to Aaron Donald, which we talked about last week, Aaron Donald possibly, being on the trade market, and both of us agreeing that the Pittsburgh Steelers could and should definitely make a move. And I think that that's an open mind that they will go into the trade deadline with if he is on the trading block. There is another team that also believes that they could be in the hunt for Aaron Donald. That team is the Cleveland Browns. Pete Smith of Browns Digest over at the Fan Nation group wrote an entire article about how the Cleveland Browns have the pieces to the puzzle to make a trade happen. They have the cap space. They have the whole nine. It fits perfectly. Quote, there may be several teams that could add Donald, but the Browns are certainly one of them. They have cap space and flexibility to add more, something they are likely to do anyway with the contract of Myles Garrett. They have picks and potentially even young players if they were so inclined. Not having a first-round pick in 2024 is a potential stumbling block, but they could do what the Rams did themselves, offering picks that they have in the future. Meanwhile, they also have a second and third-round picks that they can package in a few years if necessary. The Cleveland Browns, while we don't know what would happen, I think there is one team that would be the absolute worst for the Steelers, and that would be the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think that if you were going to put Aaron Donald on one team and upset Steelers fans the most, it will be the Cleveland Browns, and I don't even think that's close.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Yeah, I mean, that defensive line is already scary enough, having to play them twice, in the same year with a rookie quarterback, a questionable offensive line. Even if it did get better, you still don't really know exactly what it's going to be. Yeah, would not want him on the Browns.
Nope.
At all if I was a Steelers fan.
No.
This is just I feel like that having no 2024 first round pick, that's, I don't know, that seems like a real big hurdle for the Browns to overcome if they did want to trade for Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
If I'm the Rams, I don't know, why would I not, I get it, Pete made some good arguments in there about being able to trade him out of the division and even out of your conference. So you really are not worrying about, but also if you're the Rams, what do you mean? You're
not rebuilding with the hopes that Aaron Rodgers or Aaron Donald keeps you out of the playoffs the next 2 years before he retires. Right. I agree.
Yeah. But also, I don't know, I'd go somewhere where I can get a better pick immediately, because I also think even if the Browns aren't what some people think they are, or what they can be on paper, that pick is not, any of their picks are not going to be great. They're going to be mid first round. They're not.
Yeah.
You're not getting into the top 10 with the Cleveland Browns pick, I don't think.
No, but I don't think you're getting up there anyways. I agree with the first round pick. I think that's a huge hurdle that they might not be able to overcome. And I think that that's a stumbling block. Yes. A major, possibly breaking point. Yes. But I do think that, nobody in the top 10 is trading for Aaron Donald, especially in week 8. It's going to be a team that's pushing for the playoffs, really thinks that they have a shot, really thinks that they have the team, and he's the missing superstar to rise them to the top, and so on and so forth. So I think that you are getting a back end first round pick, which maybe helps them. But at that point, if the Cleveland Browns are looking for Aaron Donald and it's week 8 and you're only offering a second round pick, that's essentially almost a third round pick. You're the back half of the second round is where you're going to start with Aaron Donald. And then are you going to give up a first in the future? Are you giving up multiple firsts in the future? You're giving up young guys. I think our conversation with the Steelers was they do have the trade pieces. They do have the guys in place to make a trade possible. They also have the picks, but I think it's a happy back and forth where you could, maybe just offer a first round and a player, or a first and a second, or, first and a future. But to have to package things around a second round pick means that you're giving up quite a bit. And, that's a scary situation. But at the same time, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, who else is on this roster right now? It's Davlin Tomlinson. I forgot that they signed him this offseason. And then you add Aaron Donald to that mix. I don't care how good the Steelers offensive line is. That is awful. That is a very, very scary situation.
Yeah. And when are I don't have the Steelers schedule in front of me, but they play, I feel like a lot of their divisional games are like backloaded, like
Oh yeah.
because they might get the Browns like twice after the trade deadline, if I'm not.
They do get them. They get them week
Oh, no,
2.
yeah.
Week 2 is a Monday night game. They'd go so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So week 7, they would play the Rams. So they'd probably have to play Aaron Donald. And then if he's traded to the Green Bay Packers, they play him again like 4 weeks later in Cleveland on a Sunday afternoon game. So they could face Aaron Donald twice in a span of like 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That'd be bad. That'd be terrible.
That would be bad. Yeah, and then he goes. Yeah, you face him once. That's bad enough. But then he would go to a better defensive line where you have less. You can allocate less resources to block him.
And have 3 weeks to accommodate himself to the team. So it's not like he's like fresh, like limited snap count. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Like no, you're getting full. You're getting full Aaron Donald in the mix of Myles Garrett, Davlin Tomlinson, and Zadarius Smith. Would be highly unlike or highly unideal for is that the word for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you probably have to play them in the playoffs too, because if you're trading for Aaron Donald, you believe that you're getting into the postseason. I mean, that would suck. And then just for Pitt fan, I mean, you know more than I. Like for the city of Pittsburgh, man, to watch him go win a ring with the Cleveland Browns would just be
to do anything about it. For a Pittsburgh native guy stayed at home to play his college ball, and then like at least with there's no the Rams and Steelers like very rarely if ever cross paths. So like people were able to, if you're like a combination like Steelers and Pitt fan or whatever, you could root for that guy pretty easily and not worry about like, oh, is this affecting my team? No, like you could kind of unabashedly like pull for him, but if he goes to Cleveland, that completely turns it on its head, and that would be a bummer.
That is the worst case scenario. Like I grew up and there were the Baltimore Ravens got me angry. Like just like, oh, I cannot that's the game where you're like, upsettingly, I was a child, but like you're like punching walls and throwing stuff, and you're very angry during the Baltimore Ravens games. Cincinnati Bengals games, you just like hated them because they were at the time they were very disrespectful. They were a dirty team. But like that's all it was. You were just like, these guys are just rats, bunch of rats. The Cleveland Browns, man, even when the Steelers just dominated the Browns for like my entire childhood, if you asked me what team I hated the most in the NFL, the answer was the Cleveland Browns. And I think that still holds true today. Like I think Pittsburgh Steelers fans, there is one team that holds ground above the rest when it comes to just like a distaste, and it is the Cleveland Browns. So a possible storybook ending for Aaron Donald could turn into a nightmare very, very fast for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their fans. And that would just, man, that would be a bummer. Imagine you meet the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs, divisional round, maybe it's the AFC Championship game. Maybe Jason McIntyre is right and they find their way to the AFC Championship game. And across from them is Aaron Donald and the Cleveland Browns. And he's the reason that they don't make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. He just sacks Kenny Pickett like 5 times. He has like,
like
8
just
tackles
like the end
for
of the
loss.
Super Bowl where he got Joe Burrow and that was it. And oh my gosh, I don't even think you come back to the city of Pittsburgh. Like I think that at that moment you're just like there's such a different feel for Aaron Donald that I just hope we don't ever get to experience. But it's got tossed out there, and the Cleveland Browns will certainly be aggressive if they feel that's the missing piece of the puzzle. But a long way from there. Just fun conversation as we approach this last week before training camp. With that, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Like this video and check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. Find all of mine and Steven's work at allsteelers.com and all of our Pitt coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Wednesday, 1 week officially from the opening of St. Vincent College training camp 2023. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Burgh.